Yeah, it's kind of the calm before the storm with what they're cooking up with this whole Ukraine situation and what they've done to the supply chain in the last 2 years. The supply chain is literally in tatters, and that's going to affect every single country on earth. Plus, the US dollar is, I mean, the US is set to lose its place as the reserve currency. I'll be surprised if it lasts the rest of the year, to be honest. I mean, it might, but I'll be surprised if it does. What they've done by freezing Russia out of using the US dollar for trade is they've basically locked Russia out of using the world reserve currency, which of course gives everyone they lose confidence and lose faith in that currency. It's got to the position where now you've got to do what the US says or you can't trade internationally. I mean, this has never been done in the history of currency before. And it's all been set up. All these dominoes have been set up for a fall. And this big fall's about to happen. We're going to see food shortages all over the world. And now they're going to be able to blame Russia and the war in Ukraine. I mean, they're even blaming Russia. I saw a report the other day. There was a news reporter literally out there with a straight face saying that the people in Yemen are now facing starvation because of Putin's war with Ukraine. Nothing to do with the Saudi Arabians bombing them with American and British funding for the last 3 or 4 years straight. And everybody's been screaming out to get food to them. And Russia and Iran are the only ones who've actually been bringing food to them. And we won't talk about that. It's incredible how they play this narrative. So, we're heading for a big crisis. So the politicians have got to appear like they're our friends at the moment. We've got an election coming up in Australia. Look, we did the right thing. We're rolling everything back. But look, we can't help it. Now this has happened. Nothing to do with us. We'll have to get together and work out how to fix this problem, which is all about the Great Reset. We know the story now, exactly what they're doing, the digital transformation of everything, which they're doing in different ways in different countries, different strokes for different folks. But, people have said Australia is more advanced than other places and Canada is more advanced. It just depends on where you are, different advancements in different cultures in different ways. Well, yeah, and different strokes for different folks. What they've done in Nigeria, for example, they've just locked 73 million people out of their cell phone accounts in Nigeria because they haven't signed up to the digital database, which they've had in place for 2 or 3 years and nobody's used it. So they've just cut all their phone services to them. So that's the way of getting them in there. With us in Australia, they're doing it through contact tracing, gradually getting you used to scanning QR codes and doing all of this sort of stuff. And it's all for your benefit. It's all for your health. Yeah, it's such a scam. And the wheels are falling off that as well. Like that interview you did with Malcolm Roberts. We got Malcolm Roberts, the senator, saying this suggests genocide, looking
Yes.
and acknowledging that there is nanotech stuff we've been saying for like 18 months. We've been screaming out that this stuff is in the vaccines. Now we've got an Australian senator speaking out about it. The amount of hospital stuff that's going on in Australia, all these ambulances ramped up because they can't get beds for these people. The amount of people having adverse reactions from the jab, and they can call it anything they want. Now they're calling it vaccine fatigue, which is causing people to not have the flu shot. Like, yeah, there'll be a new variant or whatever they can cook up to do it. Some terrible virus that was released by Russia or whatever rubbish that they make up. The reason people's immune systems are shot is because they've been locked up for the last couple of years wearing masks and everything the government's done to them, all the stress that they've put them through. The report that I put out just yesterday, or this morning I published it, actually shows where they're going now with these ectogenesis chambers and portable wombs they're creating so that now any gender can have a baby. And of course, children that are born, when a child gestates inside the mother's womb, it shares the mother's immune system. It takes on the mother's immune system. So you'll be having children born virtually without an immune system, completely enslaved to big pharma. And through this injection and jab they're doing to everybody, I mean, they're getting rid of a lot of the old people, and they're basically destroying people's immune systems and getting them hooked on big pharma and dependent upon big pharma for everything that they need. Something Elon Musk is doing as well that I reported in the report from today is, everyone thinks he's great. He's bought Twitter and he's giving us back free speech. This is the same guy that wants to put chips in our brains and hook us all up with his neural mesh. If he wants to get good tracks on people and set up a social credit system, well, it's no good banning people from Twitter. We want to see what they're posting so you know who's categorized into what category and what social credit scores to give them for a start. But something else Tesla is doing, it's also working on 3D printed mRNA vaccines. that's something that he wants to bring for the future. So they can just take care of it all from now on with these 3D printed vaccines. And you look at the whole concept of virology, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. I think a lot of people have done a crash course in virology versus terrain theory this year. What they're basically doing with this mRNA sequence they're doing is they're splicing little codes into your DNA. So they could easily do that with 3D printing. It depends on what you're going to use for the medium. Perhaps you're introducing something like graphene and hydrogel into your 3D printing. Hydrogel, which would take on any type of, thing that it would bond to, whatever type of, organ or cell or lymph or anything, So it depends on what they're going to use for the medium. I mean, 3D printing doesn't necessarily mean they're using carbon or plastic or whatever. It could be anything. So, yeah, it just depends. So when you think of it that way, all they're doing is inserting a piece of code which instructs your DNA to produce a certain protein to perform a certain action. So it removes your body's ability to produce these proteins and keep your body in balance itself. So the more they interfere with it, then the more you're going to get out of balance, which means the more codes they need to print to put into you, because they're protecting you from diseases all the way. And what they're basically doing is genetically modifying you from the inside out. I mean, theoretically, with 3D printed strands of mRNA, you could replace someone's entire DNA strand. And something else that I've pointed out to people, which I know sounds really out there, but if you think about consciousness and the electrical universe and all of that sort of stuff, and what they've done with this, if we're really connected to the source, connected to God, connected to the field, whatever, through our DNA, well, they've come along with this mRNA and they've put a piece of code in there and they've changed that antenna. They came along beforehand and they harvested your DNA with these PCRs, which aren't a test. What are they doing? Have they hijacked the signal? Are they now controlling what's going? Is that why everyone's thinking in this hive mind manner lately? And why no one can see the forest for the trees? I mean, how can we have hundreds and hundreds of people getting sick with heart disease and myocarditis and all of this sort of stuff, and people are still thinking this is normal, that it's nothing to do with the jab? It's crazy. 769 sports people dropped in 1 year. When have we seen that in history before? We haven't seen any of this in history before. What has happened? This mass formation of the human psyche that's happened like worldwide. How has this occurred? Is it something to do with these injections and what they're doing? Have they changed people fundamentally on the inside, and are they able to intercept that signal now? Well, Elon Musk started his mRNA microfactory project in 2018, okay? So there was going to be a market for this stuff. And all the stuff that I've talked about there about how them, like perhaps intercepting your signal. I put out a film in 2012 called Transformation, where I showed you MIT studies where they're actually able to grow brain cells on circuit boards, where they were talking about DNA is a far better way it's a far better thing to make a chip out of for a computer, because you can store 1 million times more information on a piece of DNA than you can on a piece of silicon. All the stuff they're doing, everything that I've said about how they can harvest your consciousness. There's been talks from Dr. Charles Morgan at West Point, where he's pointed out they can remote control human beings. If they can get this hydrogel and stuff into people, just inject it into them, they can literally remote control people, not just their mind, but physically remote control them. And I've done experiments. They call it the possession experiment. There was another talk at West Point where they said the brain is the new battlefield. I mean, everything that I've said, as outlandish as it sounds, it's all in their own white papers. Going back 12, 15 years, they were experimenting with all of this sort of stuff. Even the experiments they did in the 60s, where they were playing around with the emotions of cats. They had to put a little device on its head, but they were making the cat angry and making it purr and all sorts of stuff. So now that we know it's all electromagnetic and you can do it all through frequency and all through Wi-Fi, well, it's very easy to manipulate the human species. And that's what they're doing. That's what they're setting this all up for, this transhumanist agenda that they've got, human 2.0, and the digitizing of everything and creating a digital barrier between you and the abundance of the earth, which is what the social crediting thing is, why they want all the cash digital, why they want you to have a universal basic income. And in a world where we've got to pay to be alive, which is a bad idea to begin with, but okay, in a world where you've got to pay to be alive, having a universal basic income so nobody slips below the poverty line would be a good thing. But when that's dished out to you by government and everything's digital, and if you don't do what you're told, then you don't get your universal basic income, then it's a very, very bad thing. And when you look at the track record of these people, who's running the world right now, what they've done to the world, why on earth would we be accepting any solution from these people? And those people who are willing to accept it, why can't you see that that's why they've done all this? So they can give you their solution, which is going to be complete power for them and absolutely no power for you. That's what their plan is. And they're very, very far advanced in this. So, we're in for a pretty ugly time. But there is a big awakening happening through it, but we're still in for an ugly time because so many people have taken this jab now. The supply chains are broken down, this whole Ukraine thing. I mean, it's going to be a pretty interesting year. See, this is what they've done by taking all power away from people for so many years over generations, just removing people of any type of autonomy at all. Unfortunately, this society is designed to nurture that type of sociopathy in people. And with what they're doing, I mean, like even the pandemic preparedness treaty, like this came out in January, they started talking about this. I alerted people to it in February and said, this is what they're doing under the surface, which will basically remove autonomy from our governments and hand it all over to the World Health Organization. So it's all going to be determined by them, and they can call these pandemics whenever they want and call this whole social crediting thing and get everybody tracked and traced. And that's what it's all about. And that's what it's always been about. This is something I've been saying to people since 2015, to watch out for this social credit system. All of this digital stuff that people are being involved in, they're giving their life over to this digital world, and this digital world is going to turn on them and they're going to use it to control you. And that's exactly what they're doing. And it's getting more and more dystopian. People have just got to stop complying with it. They've got to get rid of their smartphones. Or if you do have a smartphone, don't take it out with you when you go out. Leave it at home so it isn't tracking and tracing you everywhere, and you're not scanning QR codes, any of this stuff. I haven't scanned a QR code yet. I haven't worn a mask yet. I haven't participated in this pandemic at all. So that's really why this is continuing, because people continue to participate in it, Oh, yeah, and they'll be able to say, well, look how great it was. Look, the Australians, they fought off the pandemic. They had low death rates, and then they had all of this terrible stuff. They had fires, they had floods, and look what they've done. They've recovered with such an incredible way. What an incredible model they've set. We're just going to have to do this for everybody, and with this pandemic preparedness thing, of course, they can claim there's another pandemic for whatever reason they want to cook up. There's AIDS that they're going to get, vaccine-induced, immune deficiency, which everybody's getting anyway because of the jab. That's what the jab is. It's destroying your immune system. It's replacing a piece of code in your DNA. I don't know why people can't see this. It's just lunacy to have this jab. But yeah, I mean, it's a perfect setup. So, they can declare a pandemic. They can say, well, look, we've got to do what Australia did. I bet if they do declare another pandemic, Australia will come through with flying colours because they've done all this stuff to get all these smart cities up, and it's all really good. And we've got this resilient stuff here. We're just shielded from the world, and wow, look how great we are, And that's why people have got to look at all this and put it all on the world stage, the way it's supposed to be. I've said to a lot of people, you've got to stop thinking of the world as countries and nations competing with each other, and think of it as one big holding company with different department stores that we call nations, and the CEOs of the department stores that we call governments, and they all work together, and they're playing this huge puppet show off it against everybody. The Chinese social credit system, they've been incubating this system in China. They've got to find a way of bringing it to the West. In order to do that, they need to crash the global economy. How do you do that? Well, you destroy the US as the world reserve currency. Everything will go down around it. You have the smoke screen of this war, which could have started 8 years ago, because this conflict in Ukraine has been going on for 8 years. And suddenly now, right when the globalists need him to do it, Putin goes in and starts this huge conflict so they can cook up this whole war thing, keep the dollar propped up for another 12 months or so, and usher in this whole smart grid underneath. In Russia, they've got social crediting system. They've got biosecurity, all the biometric scanning, all this stuff coming in as well. Putin, he didn't use the Pfizer and Moderna, but he's got his own vaccine. People say, oh, he developed his own. It's not the now. Look, why is he injecting his people with a vaccine at all? There is no virus. It's never been isolated. The whole thing's a fraud. Why is he going along with it? He hasn't once come out and said the pandemic's a fraud. He hasn't once called it for what it is. I mean, Putin's a politician. Putin's the state. Like I said, if you think of the world as one big holding company where they're all playing each other off against each other, this is like someone from the government saying they're here to save you from the government. This is the same people who be thinking Putin is taking down the deep state are the same people who thought Trump was draining the swamp. Trump didn't drain the swamp. He just renamed it to government protected wetlands. That was his draining of the swamp, So It's a joke. And there's people still saying Trump's the savior, he's going to come back and save them. He did an interview the other day where he's saying how much the vaccine is one of the greatest achievements in the history of mankind. It's been 2 years. I mean, if he's still shilling for the vaccine, which he is, he's a player. I mean, Trump was their trump card. He came in, he said all the right things, but he didn't do the right things. He built that wall around the southern border of the United States. And we said at the time, that's to keep you Americans in. The Mexicans are like, I'm in Mexico at the moment. They're actually glad the wall's there because they're sick of Americans trying to come across the border to get away from what's going on in the United States. So, you know, he's a player. If Hillary had been elected, there would have been a revolution in the United States. And then Trump got elected and everyone sat there and said, trust the plan. They didn't do anything. And on Trump's watch, the entire economy was destroyed. They managed to put a lockdown, the entire country, shut it all down so no one could travel in there, break down the trade system. You know, it's incredible how he got away with all this stuff. And everyone still thinks he's their friend. He's a player, the same as them all. Again, you don't get the big chair if you're not bought and paid for. It's one big holding company. People seriously believe that it's nations competing against each other and that Trump was doing things to try to secure America's borders and make it all great. It's all a fiction. The whole thing is a fiction. It's a facade. We didn't even have passports until after World War I. We used to be able to travel freely and share each other's cultures. No one wanted to steal anything or have wars with each other or any of this sort of stuff. Now, why do we need governments to protect us? Who from? Well, we need the government to protect us because China might come and invade us. No, China is just people. They don't want to invade you. You need the government to protect you from the Chinese government. You know, it's the two governments. Well, if we didn't have the governments, we wouldn't have a problem. We need governments to protect us from other governments. And now people are coming along saying one of these governments is going to save us. No, it's all the one system. It's all one thing. That's what I've been trying to show people. And when you step back and look at it, it's completely obvious. This is a puppet show. Who wants to be the enemy this week? How can we maneuver the people into buying into all this shit we want to sell them and do to them? You know, and this is how they do it, you know, keep you in fear of the other nations, think you need government to protect you from whatever, viruses, diseases, other governments, wars, cyclones, whatever, the weather's coming, the government will protect you. You know, it's a scam. The whole thing is a scam. What we've got here is an opportunity to see this, because the whole system's breaking down, the veil's breaking down. They're going to come and offer you their solution, which is going to be their world government system, their world pandemic treaty. We need it all centralized so we can protect you. These are the people who created the problem. What we've got an opportunity here to do is to see that the world is run by criminals who've set this up, and we've got an opportunity to rediscover ourselves and to take control of our own lives and to do something else with our future than what they've got planned for us. Yeah, I mean, they just say this off. If 70% of the countries agree, then everybody agrees by default. Really, okay, so if there's 10 of us here in a Zoom room and 7 of us where we decide that we're a democratic Zoom room, and if 7 of us decide it's time to start smashing ourselves in the face with a hammer, the other 3 have to start doing it. They don't have a choice. You're telling me that's the way the world works? I mean, seriously, that's what they're saying to you. What do you mean if 70% agree we've got to do this? Hang on a minute. Who the hell are you people to begin with? We didn't vote the WHO into power. We didn't vote the WEF into power. We didn't put the United Nations there. You guys did. You're all a bunch of criminals and pedophiles. This is an opportunity for us to see this. This is all such theatre. Well, it's got to be this way because this guy wrote it down on paper. And look, we put a fancy little gold stamp on it. And he was wearing an expensive suit when he did it. So that means you have to do what you're told. I mean, seriously, folks. Wake up to yourselves. You know, government is a system that we employ to manage infrastructure for us in a responsible manner. And when you look at all the problems that exist on Earth, they all exist. Whether it's environmental damage or corporate damage or whatever, some company is destroying something, they'll destroy the environment because the fine they pay is far, far less than the profit that they're going to make for destroying the environment, because all of this is legislated into place. You know, when you've got a company that does a $10 billion job and it destroys the environment to do it, and it's fined $10 million for the damage it's done, all that is the government saying, okay, we're going to let you destroy the environment, but you've got to give us a little skim off the top. We'll take 10 million off the top and we'll call it a fine, but we'll let you get away with it. We want our 10 mil. That's all it is. It's just such a scam. The whole thing's a scam. So why do we go along with it? Well, every problem that we have that exists on the Earth, it exists because it's legislated to exist by the very people now that are going to come and offer us their solution for what they have done to the world and what they have done to us. And we go along with it because they wear expensive suits and they're on this little TV and the media tells us that they're important. No, they're not. They're traders. They're people we employ to manage infrastructure for us, and they're all in abuse of the opposite they hold. They're skimming the cream off the top, and they're destroying your life to do it. Wake up to yourselves, people. We don't need this anymore, and this is an opportunity for us to see that. And to take the world back, to become human again. And you're going to have to, because if you don't, then again, it'll lead you into this smart grid, and there's not going to be anything you can do about it if you don't have those life skills, you know. Yeah. And how they're going to get these alleged viruses into people, which aren't viruses, but what they're doing is they're just getting this injection into people, which is going to destroy their immune system in various ways. I mean, who knows what they can do with so many different things? When you look at all the nanotech that they're putting in there, you look at some of the stuff that La Quinta Columna put out there. They're literally building an operating system inside you. They tell you it's an operating system. When they're doing a website, they're installing an operating system. So what can they do with this? What things can they trigger in people? How can they control your body? What viruses can they create? What diseases can they create? They can create a pandemic anytime they want, just out of manipulating people's immune systems with all this technology they're injecting into people, which is what 5G is all about. The next range of communication, 5G communication, 5th generation, using the millimeter wave. It's a fast enough beam for them to be able to do that. And you were talking before about the Internet of Things and having deck chairs spying on you and stuff. Well, I did a report recently, and La Quinta Columna have also been talking about it, the IOB, the Internet of Bodies. So it won't just be the chair spying on you. You will literally be part of the internet yourself, the Internet of Bodies, which is what all this nanotech is that they're putting into people, the IOB. And they'll be able to monitor your breathing, your heart rate, all your organs. They'll be able to monitor your thoughts, replace your memories. Even Klaus Schwab himself has said, yes, we can replace people's memories. He actually said that at one of their conferences. They can already do this. And when you look at the stuff that I was talking about with the brain being the new battlefield, the stuff that's actually been done at West Point, which is military, okay? You've got doctors lecturing at West Point, a military academy, on how the brain is the new battlefield and how to remote control and drive other human beings like drones. I mean, can people see where this is going? And this was back in 2018 or 2015, they were talking about this. This was technology that was on the table then, and they could already do it back then. So now we're in 2022. Can you see where all this is going? So yeah, you're going to have people, it's just next level what they're going to be able to do. They'll be able to trigger they'll be able to target someone, because the millimeter wave is a targeting wave. It's a direct wave. They might be able to see you in the supermarket, target you for kidney failure, target you to go crazy and kill the person next to you, whatever. And this might sound far-fetched, but on their own white papers, they talk about how they can do this. And that's what they're putting in place. Once they've got the Internet of Bodies hooked up, the chair won't be just spying on you and your movements. It'll be checking out your heart rate. It'll be checking out what you're feeling, what your perspiration rate is, whether you're nervous, whether you're in an anxious state. Maybe you're doing something wrong. Maybe you're thinking something the government doesn't want you to think. You know, there's so much that they can do with this once they get this into people, which is why they are going out of their way to get this jab into as many people as they can, because they want them hooked up to this grid that they're putting in place, which is what 5G is all about, the millimeter wave. I mean, the speed that people will get from the millimeter wave, they won't notice it. You won't notice the difference between 4G and 5G. What will notice it is AI. It's not for you, it's for AI. That's what the 5G system's for. Oh yeah, they will. A lot of them will. And when that happens, I mean, a lot of the cities are going to freak out. You don't want to be in a city. When this goes down, you want to not be in the city. I've been telling people to get out of the cities and start stacking up on food and get with your tribe. You know, sure, if people wake up of their own accord and bring them into the fold, but even if we were to wake people up now, even if we were to go and wake up the entire world and all of these criminals and we stood up and we got them all out of power, it's already gone to the point that so many people have had the jab. There's going to be a lot of damage done in the next year. And even when you look at who they are, let's blame the elite. We'll blame the Jesuits and the Freemasons and the Jews and the aliens and anybody you want to blame. It's all good. Okay, well, let's remove all of them. Now it's being driven by the tech companies and the huge profits they're going to make from rolling out this surveillance system. And it's being used and it's being driven by everybody who is using this tech to participate in the surveillance system. If you're scanning QR codes, if you're signing into these places, you're using this contact tracing, if you're using digital money, then that's the problem. That's what's driving it now. Sure, there was a lot of nefarious people that put all this stuff in place, but what's driving it now is us. And it's our unwillingness to step outside of the system and remember what it means to be human again. See, people have forgotten how to enjoy their lives. They've got to go to the restaurant or go to the theatre or go to the football game or go to one of the designated enjoyment zones that the government has created for you inside the people farm that they've got you locked inside. People have forgotten how to go and have a drum circle or go down the beach and have a picnic with their friends or go walk in the forest or whatever, do something like that to enjoy life. They don't want to be barred from the designated government-approved enjoyment zones where everything's done for them. They don't have to think about anything. They have to think about how to get around or how to cook food or how to grow food or how to make their clothes or how to look after themselves in any way, shape or form. They don't want that. They want to be free, but they don't want to be completely self-responsible. Well, what is freedom? It's self-responsibility. So how does this work? So that's where we're going. And that's what I mean. That's what this is an opportunity for. So whatever happens, even if we bring them all down, it has to run out to its natural course now. And we're going to get to a point where society splits in two, even if they don't bring this whole system online. They might not. We might actually expose it enough that they may completely fail. But even if they do, the world's never going to go back to the way it was, because a lot of that society, when society does break down and the food chain breaks down and things break down, the cities are going to go crazy. And you want to not be anywhere near that. You've got to find your tribe and be able to get through to the other side of what the next 5 years is going to be. And nobody really knows what that looks like, because we don't know whether we're going to be able to bring these parasites down, whether it's going to go smart, whether it's not. Like I said, either way, you're going to have what is virtually going to be a zombie apocalypse in the meantime, just because of all the people who had the jab and the breakdown of the supply chain through the process of that.